father, I'm a husband, and I want my daughter to know that she can grow up and that her life is going to be valued just like everybody else that I grew up with.
We gotta work harder, smarter, harder. We gotta work harder, smarter, harder. Do this for the mamas, fathers, daughters, and the sons. In Sadie Springs, a black man has never won. When it's all said and done, Carter gon' get it done. He might be running for man, but he ain't never run from the problems in the world we tryna overcome. They raising the taxes for lower tax brackets. How that make sense, man?
Y'all, I'm sorry, that thing's so cold though. That thing is so cold. Man, James Weaver, we still gonna sit down and we're gonna put the music video together and everything. But man, when you see the community get behind something like this, and I'm talking about the mayoral campaign, so I was just a little excited. I had to go on my little cap cut and throw some pictures in. But I wanted to tap in. I'm gonna get to my main event in just a second, but we couldn't start without acknowledging what we all been preparing for throughout the day is this crazy weather that's gonna be headed our way. But earlier today, we all know Kemp had issued his executive order declaring a state of emergency for 10 tornadoes and severe storms, saying these winds could reach up to 75 miles an hour. We're expecting wind gusts, tornadoes, large hail, isolated flash flooding. And so I just want to make sure that we do what we do on our end and continue to get the word out. And I'm sitting here in my basement, hunkered down in the podcast room, and I love. We've been working on this thing for like 3 years, y'all. That's just how I do, right? It's all about perfection. So I'm still working on it, still working on it, still working on it. But it's been interesting. I've been having a lot of conversations with people in the community, and it's been, overwhelmingly about this housing issue, price of everything, inflation. And there's been this conversation, and they're like, well, what can you do differently about housing that the people in office can't? And I'm not the smartest tool in the shed, y'all. I'm gonna be honest. I didn't get a full ride anywhere. I graduated, but I didn't get a full ride. So, I'm not the smartest person out there, and I'll never claim to be. But if there's one thing that I've learned how to do is, fact check as a reporter. That's what I did. Fact check, we read, we do all these things, right? And so that's what I became, semi good at. And so what was interesting is I was reaching out to some of my lawyer friends that I know, and we're talking about housing. Their big thing was, what does the Supreme Court say about these issues? And I know folks are like, oh, we're done with the Supreme Court. We're done with them. We're done with them. We're done with them. Yeah, the Supreme Court is still shutting the orange man down. Like, seriously, I think he's 0 for 11 right now. 0 for 11. It's bad. Real bad. Real bad. So, I'm gonna get into what the Supreme Court talked about, right? Um, because I had to print everything out, y'all. I had to print out the court cases I found. I was really proud of myself. Me, ChatGPT, we spent some time looking over things, and I brought it and had some of my attorney friends look over it, and they were like, "Man, you found all these by yourself?" And I was like, "By myself, well, me and ChatGPT. It's amazing what you can do with a good set of help, right?" But with the housing talk, what I wanted to start with, right? And I just they like to say America's on a fourth grade reading level. America's not really smart. I don't really agree with that, right? I just think we just need to know where the information is. Like when I started working with lawyers and I started understanding how the legal system and political system work, I was like, oh, that's easy. That's it. Yeah, that's it. It's it's really, really that simple. And so, with this housing talk, I want to remind everybody what the role of the Supreme Court is here in the United States of America. Because, they're the end all be all, right? We have the Supreme Court, we have the US Constitution, and then we have their interpretation of it, right? And so, you know, We had these what, over 100 or so men locked themselves in this room for a period of time to work on this document that they said was going to work for everybody, each of us, right? Each of us, right? And so this same document is what so many of the civil rights leaders used to take their stand, right? So, like, you had the protests in the streets, but then you also had the lawyers arguing in Supreme Court. So, I just want to start off with there, right? So, we're gonna jump into this, right? So, the role of the Supreme Court is to serve as the highest court in the nation, ensuring mm, the laws and government actions comply with the U.S. Constitution. Right? It's not rocket science, y'all. It's not. It's pretty plain Jane. Like seriously, it really is. Right? And so, what do? They interpret the Constitution. They do judicial reviews, resolving legal disputes. They're the final arbiter of, you know, federal law, protecting rights and liberties, maintaining the checks and balances. All that to say, guys, is all this stuff goes back to the US Constitution, right? US Constitution, really not that hard. Really, really not that hard. And I like it, right? And I had to take a nice little screenshot here because I wanted to read it to y'all because I just, this first little, it's not even a real paragraph. It's the sentence, first sentence, right? So it says, "We the people mm, of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union." Whoa. So, in order to form a more perfect union, they do what? What do they do to form this perfect union? Establish justice. Dang, that's the first word. That's the first word. Establish justice. Mm. Boy, mm, mm. And I got to read this out to y'all, right? Because I was sitting in church last weekend and a sister at church came up and she said, "Mr. Carter, we appreciate you running for mayor. We want to know what you're going to do with housing." I told y'all these folks been asking me about housing. Everybody think when I bring this stuff up that Dante's just talking. I mean, everybody asking. Sandy Springs residents asking me about housing. Folks in Atlanta that know me asking me about housing. I mean, I'm even getting emails and everything already about this housing issue, right? Folks want to know. They want to know. That's just the reality. Because what's happening right now, right? Wages aren't increasing, but livelihood, well, not livelihood, but the properties, the houses, the rent, all those things are shooting up and going through the roof. But anyways, let me get back to this first sentence here that's extremely impactful. That sentence where it says, "We the people." Mm, we the people. Mm, of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union. Mm. Establish justice. We talked about justice now. That's just they keep talking about this whole equity part, but that's the first word brought up in the Constitution. Oh, why are you talking about equity and DEI? Man, it's in the US Constitution. It's like the basics we asking y'all for just it's right here, man. It's right here. I didn't write this. People that look like me didn't write this. But since it's in here, we're gonna talk about it. Oh my goodness. Okay, let me get back to this, right? So establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility. We all want peace, don't we? Yes, we do. Mm. Provide for the common defense, promote general welfare. Promote general welfare. I'm gonna leave that alone, y'all. And secure the blessings, blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. You know what posterity is, right? Posterity is my Kylie, right? My descendant, the generations of folks coming out. They were thinking about the generations of folks that come after. They may not have been thinking about the former slaves, but Needless to say, guess what? It's in the Constitution. So we're gonna stand by it. Holla. Um, and then it goes on and says, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Isn't that crazy? I don't like, y'all, this is like, this is crazy, right? And so we're gonna tie in how that connects to housing, right? In a second, because the Supreme Court's already ruled on it. Let me look at this. One, two, three, four times. Wow. And those are the four that I could find. My non uh admitted self into any law school in America, right? This is just me um just being studious, me and chat GPT just tagging and dagging on some stuff, right? So it's just this stuff is bananas, right? So you sit here, and that's why I said we just gotta have a whole learning session. Cause like I want y'all to ask some questions, some real questions. And I'm streaming on multiple platforms right now. So I'm gonna have to go back and look at each one individually. But listen, I got y'all. I'm gonna come back, I promise. I promise. Because I'm excited about this. Cause I've been listening to people tell me about what the Georgia law says about how you can't do rent control and this, that, and the third, yada, 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 yada. And guess what? Constitution says something different, don't it? Supreme Court's ruled on something different, didn't it? And I'm not even saying that's what I'm gonna do. That's the crazy part. I just want y'all to know how the elected officials ain't showing up for y'all the way they're supposed to. That's all I'm saying. And it's just important that we read in here so that we understand, so that everybody has a common understanding of what's on here, right? So let me what's crazy about this, right? Because we got all these candidates that are talking about local issues. Last presidential election, they were all talking about local issues, right? And I just want to make sure, right, that we're clear, that we're clear on what the roles are of each and everybody. Because listen, y'all, I've said this before, I'm gonna say it again, right? There are three positions here in the United States of America, according to the US Constitution, where you can get immediate change. What are those three? It's the president, the governors, the mayors. So these mayors telling y'all what they can and can't do, mm, either either they got that scurry bone in their back, or they don't care about their residents. I'm just saying. Just gonna be real, right? Just gonna be real. So let me go over here because I want to tie this all in, right? I want to tie it all in. And I'm gonna pull up Sandy Springs Charter, which is on their website, right? Mm. So I'm gonna scroll down here in a second, but I like to read through, right? So everybody has a full understanding of what we're looking at, right? So this was enacted by the General Assembly of Georgia. Mm. Okay. This is Article 1, Creation, Incorporation, Powers section, starting off with the incorporation. This act shall constitute the charter of the city of Sandy Springs, Georgia. The city of Sandy Springs, Georgia, and the county of Fulton, and the inhabitants thereof are constituted and declared a body politic and corporate under the same name and style of the city of Sandy Springs, and by that name shall have perpetual succession, may sue, be sued, plead, and be pleaded, yada yada. That's not the part I was looking for. I'm sorry. Let me scroll down. I think it's under this powers part here. Yeah. Yeah. Section 1.03, powers and construction. Boy, I tell you, man, if they would have taught this type of politics in school, I would have never fell asleep in class. I'm telling y'all, because it breaks it all down. So we're gonna start off in section 8. It says, this city shall have all powers possible for a city to have under the present or future constitution. Mm. Did they just say constitution? The same bit of constitution I just read to y'all a few minutes ago. Oh, well, let me stop. And laws of this state as fully, y'all notice they said, and laws of this state. So I need y'all to understand. This stuff is really clear, like crystal clear, crystal clear. I mean, our elected officials may not know anything about it because they don't know how to turn in open records requests and stuff. And I'm not talking about me. Y'all just Google it. Some stuff came out yesterday. but it's real clear, y'all. And it says this city shall have all powers of self government not otherwise prohibited by this act or by general law. Mm. The powers of this city shall be construed liberally in favor of the city. Mm. The specific mention or failure to mention particular powers shall not be what? Construed as limiting in any way the powers of this city. Mm. I tell you, man, listen. And this is where it gets interesting, right? Because it already it set the stage with telling y'all its powers under the Constitution and the state of Georgia. And the state of Georgia has a constitution as well, y'all. So I'm just saying, y'all, all these things are very interesting, right? Very interesting. And I know I'm on here at like 11:20. I do apologize, but I was just sitting down, twiddling my thumb, listening to the wind blow, and I figured, you know what? Let me share with the folks what Kemp sent out, in terms of the state of emergency. And let me talk about housing and what the Supreme Court says. So we're building up to what the Supreme Court says. But you know what? I wanted to come down here because, and number three right here, y'all see number, you probably can't, yeah, you can't see it. Don't worry, man. Let me see. Boom. I might be able to add it on. Man, let me not do this. I don't want to mess my live stream up and doing all this funkadelic. But listen, it says building regulation. To regulate, to regulate. They say you can't regulate, right? Let me stop. To regulate and to license the erection and construction of buildings and all other structures, to adopt buildings, housing, plumbing, electric, gas, and heating and air conditioning codes, and to regulate all housing and building trades to the extent permitted by general law. Oh man, right? So it said to the extent permitted by general law. Which entity decides what general law is, right? Because the state of Georgia is going to say we have a law saying you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. Well, Supreme Court already done ruled on this, right? And last time I checked, and you checked, because we got a whole civil rights movement, we got a women's rights movement. You know what I'm saying? Like we got a whole lot of everything that's happening right now. Where what's the word I'm looking for? It's interesting to me because I mean, folks, I know, I was always a good reader. I didn't like to read, I kind of knew they were kind of, giving us propaganda. So I didn't like to read the propaganda. But I love to read. I mean, you put a history book in front of me, I'll read it. You know what I'm saying? I want to understand context. I want to understand all these things, right? And so, so these right, and these ain't even all of them, right? I just wanted to find where the Supreme Court had ruled on some stuff that we're actually going through right now. We're in the middle of an economic crisis, a social crisis, and guess what this says? Ooh, it says the U.S. Supreme Court has addressed housing during times of crisis in several notable cases. Oh my goodness! Whoa! So the Supreme Court has already, excuse me, I just need to sip. So the Supreme Court has already done this. Mm. And I know I'm doing this because people in Sandy Springs and some Atlanta folks are asking me about this. And so I wanted them to know what type of research I have been doing, the attorneys I have been talking to. I know, I know they want y'all to believe I'm a lame duck. I know. But oh well, we're not gonna pull that up just yet. But it's called the Home Building and Loan Association versus Blaisdell. And this one, right, was back in 1934. 1934. It says during the Great Depression, Minnesota enacted the Mortgage Moratorium Act to prevent widespread foreclosures. The Supreme Court upheld this law, ruling that in times of severe economic distress, states could modify contracts to protect the public welfare without violating the contract clause of the Constitution, right? I know they got some conservative lawyers, they're going to go on these tangents. I just want to lay out the facts for y'all, right? Because ultimately, all it's going to take is one mayor in the United States of America to challenge these things, right? That the Supreme Court's already ruled on, the same way they challenged them during the civil rights and women's rights and all these things, right? I mean, I just want people to understand, like, you ain't gotta like me. You ain't gotta like anybody that's trans, LGBTQIA. You don't have to like anybody. You don't have to like immigrants. You don't have to like anybody, right? But it's still a land of laws. I don't need you to like me, but I do demand that you respect the law. That's just common. You ain't gotta like me. We ain't gotta be best friends, but I need you to respect the law. I'm just, it just is what it is. But and then we have Berman versus Parker, right? And this is from 1954. And I'm gonna give y'all several different cases because I want y'all to understand the extent of the power that these folks hold. So when they tell you we can't do this because of capitalism, we can't do that. I just want to paint a picture. And I know I'm doing a whole lot of talking, but don't worry, it's gonna stay up. Y'all can go back and research everything that I'm bringing up, right? And so, Berman versus Parker, 1954, it says, in this case, the court upheld the use of eminent domain to redevelop blighted areas in Washington, D.C. Yeah, right. That's where gentrification started, y'all. Not in D.C., but I'm just saying, like, but anyways, emphasizing that the government's power to seize private property for public use extends to promoting public welfare, including addressing urban blight. Okay. And y'all used a whole lot of power then to, kick some folks out when you wanted to clean the area up. But we're not gonna go there. We're not gonna go there. Then we have Kelo versus City of New London back in 2005. So we're getting into some more recent cases, right? And it says the court ruled that the government's use of eminent domain to transfer land from one private owner to another for economic development qualified as permissible public use under the Fifth Amendment, even if the area was not blighted. The decision underscored the broad interpretation of public use in addressing economic challenges, right? Like, seriously, y'all, these folks tell you that they can't do X, Y, and Z. They are LYING, if you know what I mean. Like, it's really that simple, y'all. It really, and again, some of these cases, it was me and you know, but I'm just saying, and I turned it over to some of my lawyer friends, and they started going through it, and it's like, now we got some case law, y'all. Boom. So, anyways, then this next one, right? It's from the good old state of Texas. Texas, yeehaw, brother. So Texas, and it's the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs versus Inclusive Communities Project, right? And this is back from 2015. And it says the court held that disparate impact claims are recognizable under the Fair Housing Act, allowing challenges to housing policies that, while neutral on their face, disproportionately affect minority groups. The decision reinforced efforts to combat systemic discrimination in housing during ongoing economic disparities. These cases illustrates the court's role in interpreting governmental powers and individual rights concerning housing during periods of economic and social crisis. Oh, wow. Again, that's just four of them. Four very different and four very broad cases. And I brought them here. Why? Because it shows that there's a lot that our local elected officials can do as it pertains to housing, right? It's a whole lot. What this comes down to is who's going to stand up to all this predatory development coming into our areas, pushing folks out, making folks homeless. That's something we're dealing with here. North Springs High School has a nearly 70% economically disadvantaged population of students, right? I looked at numbers at various schools in Sandy Springs, and we're looking at least 30% of the students in our public schools being homeless, right? So when we start having these conversations, right, it's either you care or you don't care. And if you don't care, that's cool too. Just get out of my way. That's how. I've always been that guy, right? You don't ca I don't want you to care. Just get out of the way, because 'cause I'm gonna come back to just like I did right here, we're gonna come back to the law. Because for me, that's what this is about. It's about the law, period, right? And so when they said, right, to form a more perfect union, we established justice. The first thing that they established was equity and treating people fairly. Period. Period. Now, we can debate whether or not you thought those laws applied to me or not, but guess what? My mama wanted me to remind y'all that she's a veteran, my daddy's a veteran, and I was born on an army base in Frankfurt, Germany, while they were serving and protecting this country. So guess what? They apply to me too. I'm just saying. My mama told me to tell y'all that. But like seriously, y'all, seriously, we just got to have a real discussion about what this is, because I feel like in this day and period, what we're fighting against, right, are two elements here, right? It's ambition and aspirations, right? And so we've got a select, very small group of people who are looking at, what do I get out of this? And then we've got a very large group of people asking, um, who can we be as a nation, right? So you got these folks that want to take, you got these folks that want to know what a truly inclusive United States of America would look like. And what I'm saying is everybody's talking about what's happening on the federal level, and we're not talking about, excuse me, and we're not doing a whole lot of talking about what accountability looks like on a local level, right? What it looks like for our commission chairs, what it looks like for the mayors, what it looks like for city councils. Um, what I'm realizing, and I've had some state lawmakers tell me this, I've got death threats. I'm scared. I'm like, dude, I got death threats too when I was running for mayor. I got death threats talking about exercising the power that the Constitution and the state constitution of Georgia gives mayors in ensuring that there's equity and protecting each and every one of the citizens. But I'm still here talking that talk. And I'm still here telling folks, you don't like it, pull up. Y'all know where I be. Let's not pretend like y'all don't see me outside and see me in the street. Like let's not fake it. Like y'all know where I am. Um, but honestly, right? We have to be honest about where we're headed in this day and time. If we don't get back to this, and when I say get back, we ain't never really had it. We need love centered leadership. We need leadership that understands that if you're not pulling up from the bottom, this thing is going to crumble and fall apart. That's just what it comes down to. I understand we're in a capitalistic society, but guess what? It's the role of government, as I just read to y'all in the US Constitution and in the Sandy Springs Charter, to ensure that they're protecting all the residents, right? All the citizens, right? All the people that live in this country. It's the government's job to balance. I even read that to y'all, right? And under one of the Supreme Court's duties, right? The last one, number 6, maintaining the checks and balances. And so why would these men that founded this country list justice, which ain't nothing but equity and fairness, as the first thing when creating a more perfect union if it didn't matter? I'm going to tell you why. Because they didn't trust themselves. They didn't trust them dudes in that room. And they wanted to make sure that when the weight of this thing turned, they would be protected, right? I'm just gonna be honest with y'all. And what I'm saying is we are protected under what they wrote in this paper. And so I'm down for marching, I'm down for keeping pressure on them, I'm down for all that. But I also want to make sure that we are down in these courtrooms and ensuring that we are making sure that our rights are being upheld. Because we got attorneys fighting. We got attorneys. And again, Donald Trump has had at least 11 cases go before the Supreme Court, and they told him no. Like, I know he's doing a whole lot, and he's throwing this here, throwing that there, and everybody's like, craziness, craziness, craziness. But guess who's right behind him doing the checks and balances on power? It's the Supreme Court. They've been saying, nah, bro, you can't do that. Can't do that. Can't do that. We know you want to do it, but you can't. You can't. And so what I'm saying is let's continue to push. Let's continue to persevere. Let's start to really understand these laws, right? And let's start to learn them. Because when 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 2020 and all this stuff was popping off, when the civil rights movement was popping off, when women's rights movement was popping off, the people that stood on the sidelines were like, what are they so mad about? We're mad because our rights are being violated. We're mad because wages aren't increasing, but housing is through the roof. Gas prices are through the roof. Food costs are through the roof. And there's nobody at any level, that's just being honest, at any level that's fighting to ensure that there's balance. And that's the type of leadership. Folks are mad at people for not coming back to the polls. I'm not mad at anybody for not coming back to the polls because it's our job to listen to the people. And it's our job to make sure that their concerns are what the candidates are speaking about and not just speaking about, but actually doing. And so when you get a candidate that gets elected into office and things don't get done, but people then 4 years later are seeing this guy on a rampage signing a historic number of executive orders, we have to understand like if we're on the side of right, stand on it and stand on it courageously and put your chest out, roll your shoulders back and stand with courage. So I say all this to say when it comes to this issue of housing, we already know we're in an economic crisis, y'all. Let's not pretend. I don't care what the media says. I don't care what anybody says. I had a friend of mine that's in real estate. He told me 3 years ago. He said the bottom's falling out on this thing, and he said the way my industry works is we're gonna make as much money as we can until the government calls it, right? And they're still doing it. But what I'm saying is this stuff only continues to happen when we don't hold our elected officials accountable and when we don't put people in office that care about the entire community. And that's what we need. But what I want y'all to know is, as crazy as things are, that US Constitution I read to you, these court cases I read to you, oh, case law. Give us a little bit of hope. Why? Because it gives us something to stand on and fight for. I found myself, what was it, 2 weeks ago? Not even 2 weeks, a week ago, when they were remembering the March on Selma. And it wasn't until December, December, that I found out that my great great grandfather was born a slave on a plantation 5 miles outside of Selma. 5 miles. 5 miles. And I sat over there, and that's when this moment became extremely, extremely real to me. Right. So when we talk about the work that was done, we talk about John Lewis marching across this bridge with 600 other individuals. They're getting their heads beat in, and they're being bitten by dogs. Some got shot at. Just all the craziness that happened just because they were walking across this bridge to register folks to vote. They wanted to ensure that these areas in Alabama that were predominantly black, because these were folks who were descendants of the plantations in the area, had a voice in politics. And I sat back and it all became real to me because in these books that I got in school and everything, we didn't have that. Right? I'm not learning about that. I mean, this is this is my dad's grandfather. He didn't even know about him, right? Like I'm going through tax records, all these things, and lining stuff up. But I say all that to say they did what they did in a time where they didn't have rights. We still got rights. We still have an ability to vote, right? We still have an opportunity to switch these things and change them in 2025 because the biggest misconception that we have, right, is that the we look at the state elections and the presidential elections as that's the end all. Like we flip those and something will change. We flip this and no. Listen, We need to vote in 2025 in these municipal elections. In North Fulton, where I live, Kamala Harris won every city except two, Milton and Mountain Park. We should have Democrats running up and down. Like seriously, up and down. Like if we understand that things are changing, well, it's time to put the courage behind that and run for these seats. And that's why I ran for mayor. Why? Because I know a majority of the people in Sandy Springs feel more like me than they do the other three stooges that have jumped in the race, right? And so I just we have to be honest about where our people and our voters are. We got to be honest. And so I want y'all to know that every election is going to be the most crucial election. We need to look at school boards. We need to look at everything. Like the Constitution. If anything, if we've learned anything about this, is the Constitution protects us, right? Why not stand on it and stand courageously? Stand courageously. We don't have to be abolitionists hiding in the dark trying to get slaves to freedom. We don't have to do that, right? We don't have to be the doctor who opened up a clinic in an alley to help women who needed abortions. Like we don't have to hide to do what's right. We just do it. We just got to do it. And so it's like, I listened to one of my mentors and he talked about how, if you look at history, this is historically the time period where we lose. I don't lose, y'all. I don't lose. Now we talking about my daughter's life. I got a daughter here that has less rights now than what her mother had when she was born. We're not losing now. And I need our voters to understand that. And I know we got people fighting. I know we got people protesting. What I'm saying is when it comes to this organizing, we got to ensure that the majority of people, these voters, understand why we're outside, understand what we're doing. Because the reality is people are struggling, people are hurting. Period. A lot of us are in a place of comfort and privilege to where we can lift our heads up and look at what they're doing in the political system. Everybody's not like that. Some people are living paycheck to paycheck. I had a principal that reached out, said, I got a mom who's running late to pick up her kids. She doesn't get off work on time. She's worried about getting fired. Um, we got space to put them in this after school program, but she can't afford it. And so me and some folks got together and we raised the money, right? We got to figure out what we need to do to meet people where they are. Because, and I know I speak from a black lens a lot, but that's what I am, right? That's my life experience. I can't change that. And I'm sorry for people that want me to flower it in with all these different, but I can't change it. What I know is they understood if they wanted to do a Montgomery bus boycott, they had to make sure that people had rides to work. And so they created a taxi line, right? They met people where they were to get to the objective. We are going to have to look at creative ways of of ensuring that our people understand what's going on so that we can get the end goal. And that's a so many people voting to where they can't play with the numbers, right? So many people voting to where it overwhelms this system. Because that's the only way we're going to keep good people in there. Because they're just going to attack them. They're going to go for them. They're going to go for them. They're going to go for them. So, anyways, look, I know I'm starting to ramble. I'm starting to talk, but I'm just I just wanted to stop in. I hope my power don't go out tonight. We'll see. But I know I'm getting the alerts right now about severe weather moving into the area. But listen, y'all, I love y'all. I'm speaking from a place of hope and love, and we got to continue to move this thing and push it in a way. Again, I wanted y'all to hear what I was saying with the U.S. Constitution, the Georgia Chart. I mean, Sandy Springs Charter, Georgia Constitution. We have a lot of power. There's a lot of power that's given to the people. It's on us to ensure that all the people, all of them, are standing up and exercising their voices. This whole the small number of voter turnout we're getting in these local elections where things are going to get hit the hardest, we got to get bigger turnouts. Period. A lot of this stuff that's being dictated, if you look at history, it was dictated on the local level. It was the mayors, the city councils, segregation, the mayors, the city councils. So we just got to understand where our fight is, and we got to fight them on multiple fronts: local, state, and federal. So we got work to do. I love y'all. Thank y'all for tuning in. And in the spirit of, one of my mentors and amazing brothers, we're gonna end on my little tribute to John Lewis. So thank y'all again, and let's get it.
We do not want our freedom gradually, but we want to be free now.
John Lewis once said, "We may not have chosen the time, but the time has chosen us. And there has never been a time of greater need than now."
Taking to the streets, protesters with the People's Uprising.
Because many of us have been to Minnesota, many of us have been to Louisville, many of us have been to Brunswick, but this is Atlanta. This is our home. This is the birthplace of civil rights. And we will get justice.
If I may, Mrs. Cook, please accept deepest condolences at this tragic killing of your son on behalf of myself and this International Commission. By this hearing, this tragedy is being given international spotlight.
In the heart of Atlanta's Freedman Park, leadership has a face.
We are tired. We are tired of being beaten by policemen. We're tired of seeing our people locked up in jail over and over again. And then you holler, be patient.
As we remember a legend, we're also reminded that the time to lead is now.
I can't say what's going to happen in other states, but this police brutality is going to stop in the state of Georgia.
John Lewis, my brother and my hero, thank you.